So the Munster Hurling Championship taking a break this weekend, so a time for the Football Championship to take centre stage. We'll look ahead to what's happening in Ulster and in Leinster over the coming days, but we want to focus on Roscommon against Mayo, McHale Park, Castlebar, 7 o'clock Saturday night in the Connacht football semi-final. A place in the decider against Galway awaits the winners. Billy Joe Padden is on the line. Evening, Billy Joe.
How are things, Nathan?
I don't want to get stuck talking about Mayo for 20 minutes. They get very angry about it still these days. Accusations of bias, I just don't understand it. So let's start with Roscommon, Billy Joe, and where they are right now, because you think back to heading into last year's Connacht Championship. They'd just been promoted from Division 2. They were the reigning Connacht champions and all seemed good. And then 12 months on, they've been relegated from Division 1, having just won the one match, and they shipped 868 in the Super 8s. And as Enda Smith said, Jesus, we're miles off this as they walked off the pitch against Tyrone. From what you've seen under Anthony Cunningham and the time he's had in charge over the past 6 months, have they been able to close the gap on the elite teams?
I'm not sure about closing the gap completely, but I think that there's been a change of focus in some respect, and it probably might be a change of focus that I think might suit them better in the long run. And because they have some talented footballers, they have some very good forwards. But I think under Cunningham, they've definitely been more physical, more aggressive, and that kind of keys into the nature of Roscommon footballers over the years. They've always been very, very, very physical. And I think it will result in them that they will be more competitive should they get back to the Super 8s. And this whole thing about getting relegated from Division 1 or coming up from Division 2, all right, it's the most important thing is to stay in Division 1. But really what you're talking about, Roscommon are probably the 8th or 9th best team in the country. And that's a fact. And that means they're a dangerous opposition for anyone, because on their day they can be very, very good with the talented players that they have. So I think that we'll learn a bit more about whether they're making that progress throughout this championship campaign. But I think they're on the right track, because the first thing you have to do to be able to play against Mayo or play against Kerry or Dublin is to be able to stand up to them physically. And that's just not about being pushed off the ball. That's about being able to run with them for the full 75 minutes and then be able to deal with the hits that are coming in. And not only your first 15 being able to deal with that, but the 21 or 22 players, wherever you end up using over the course of a couple of games, that the people you bring off the bench are ready and up to that pace.
So do you expect then Roscommon on Saturday night to be going man-to-man with Mayo, or does more physicality equal more defensive setup?
Well, I think they're going to be more physical either way, whatever way they do it. I expect them to drop men back into defence. You'll see some of the half forwards they have there in Gilroy and Darcy. They will probably help out around the middle of the field, and they'll get a lot of bodies back in behind the ball when Mayo have it, because I think the one area Mayo have been dominant over Roscommon in the last couple of times they've played has been that ability to win the ball in the middle of the field and hold on to it. So I expect Roscommon to get loads of bodies behind the ball, but in that situation, when they find themselves in that shell, I think they're going to be very, very aggressive, particularly with the Dailies are back in there. They're players that weren't playing last year. They're very physical, they're good footballers, they're very committed, and they love nothing more than playing a physical brand of football against some of these Mayo forwards who, probably haven't shot the lights out in championship games in the past. So I think that's where Roscommon will see the platform that they can develop to then go on and create counterattacks for their forwards to maybe win some one-on-one battles at the other end of the field.
Lee McHale is a man who's well positioned to give his take on where Roscommon are right now. He was coaching for the last couple of years under Kevin McStay. He was on OTBAM on all our social channels early this morning. Here's what he had to say about this Roscommon side.
Roscommon will be coming with lots of enthusiasm, lots of confidence. Despite the tough league campaign, I can't see Roscommon. Obviously, I know the lads very well, and I hope it's a good game. I think it'll be competitive for 3 quarters. But I think in the fourth quarter, Mayo's physical power and strength around the middle of the field, and the fact that they'll be bringing on all-star footballers in the last 15-20 minutes as subs will swing it in Mayo's favour, and I think Mayo will pull away in the end.
From your time with Roscommon, was your sense at the end that there was a kind of an idea of unfinished business around this team, because there was clear improvements during your involvement there? Could there have been another bit of improvements, and are they going to make that stride forward this year?
Yeah, well, I have to say now, I enjoyed every minute of working with the lads. There's a lot of really good footballers there, Jeremy Bertha, Enda Smith, Niall Kilroy, Tiger Rourke, just to name a few, and they're very ambitious and they're very keen. I have one major regret. Roscommon should have won 3 Connacht titles in a row. The first year, drawn game in Salt Hill against Galway, got hammered in the replay in Castlebar, won it the year after, and last year again scored the penalty. Conor Devaney to put Roscommon a point up, and then conceded 2 or 3 points. And I felt that game was kind of thrown away as well. So, the amazing thing is that Roscommon were in the last 3 Connacht finals, won one, and probably should have won the other 2 as well. So again, like, they've been through a lot. They're more than Mayo, but not at the same level. They've been through an awful lot, lads, and they've been getting tougher and stronger as the years have been going on. And they're all, most of the key players now are 27, 28, getting up there and getting bigger and getting a little bit more used to these types of big games. Having said that, I'll go back to what I say. I think this Mayo team is in a great place. I think the strength and depth has never been as good. And I think that the fact that power in the middle of the field and the calibre of player that Mayo are going to be bringing on the last 20-25 minutes, I don't think Roscommon have that. And I think because of that, I think Mayo will pull away in the end.
Is that the difference, Billy Joe, that the physicality that you expect Roscommon to bring, Mayo can match that, and then when that natural dip comes after an hour, actually, maybe there won't be that dip from Mayo?
I think that is a big factor. I'd have to agree with Liam on that aspect of it. I suppose when you look at the Roscommon team, though, if that is a team that starts, and I'd suspect it might not be.
Yeah, just on that, on the team that's named, Enda Smith obviously isn't there. He's still struggling with a broken finger, but may well come back into this. But aside from that, as you said, the 3 Dailies are all there. Jim Mert is named at corner forward. It does look as though it's a fairly strong Roscommon side. Yeah, it does. In saying that, I have a funny feeling that Enda Smith will play some part. Maybe even Donny Smith might be able to come off the bench there, and they're quality players that can really hurt Mayo if Roscommon were able to find themselves in a strong position going into that last third. But I agree with Liam. When you look at what Mayo have developed this year alone, effectively, in terms of, you have Andy Moran coming off the bench. There's going to be maybe Killian O'Connor might be able to come off the bench. Colin Boyle in defence. I know, and then there are players that they don't have available in Fionn McDonough and Vaughan and Seamie O'Shea who are injured. So that kind of shows that the strength that this Mayo team has at the present. And I think it'll be a big factor in the last 10 minutes of the game. When you look at the league campaign and what Horan was trying to do with Mayo this season, the teams that had success against Mayo, what were they doing that frustrated Mayo, that really got at them, and even aside from maybe the Dublin game? Well, I think, you take the Dublin game out of it. The Dublin game could have been really ugly for Mayo in that they conceded so many goal chances. And if it wasn't for Rob Henley playing really, really well, it could have been horrific. But I think there's one element that in that Dublin game that we might have seen in all of the games Mayo played, is that they were kind of vulnerable to goal chances. Even in that league final against Kerry, there was a couple of goal chances there. If Kerry had taken them, Mayo wouldn't win that game. I think probably the most frustrating game of the whole lot was against Galway, in that exactly what Galway were going to bring because they've played the same way for the last 3 or 4 seasons, and they've been able to beat Mayo playing that way. And then Mayo just weren't able, in terrible conditions, weren't able to get enough scores when they really needed them to win the game. And I suppose that's the fear that Mayo supporters will have, is that if it turns into another tight game, and against a team that defends really well, gets lots of bodies behind the ball, the concern will be, can they break down that blanket defence? And in some of the teams that you would have expected them to struggle in the league, they didn't. They were really, really good from a forwards point of view against Tyrone and against Monaghan. But maybe that was a result of both of those teams not being really not playing well on those days, as opposed to anything Mayo did. But I'm saying that James Horan has refocused the team in terms of that hard running style, half-backs, much more likely to get ahead of the play, run off the shoulder, and that has really benefited the way some of the players are playing, in terms of, Vaughan has made an impact when he's coming up the field. Paddy Durcan always does. He always chips in at a point. And I think that's helped out some of the forwards, and particularly in the latter stages of the league, you saw some real good things from Fergal Boland. All right, Fionn McDonough's not available, but players like that have really benefited from the speed that Mayo have moved that ball from the half-back line forward. That speed that they move the ball forward, then, does that put an extra pressure on the full back line? And I'm particularly wondering about Chris Barrett and Keith Higgins, and you could be laughed out of it for suggesting that there's a lack of pace when it comes to Keith Higgins, but he is playing his 155th game for the senior footballer on Sundays. Like, he's been a hell of a servant, as is Chris Barrett, and Brendan Harrison's come on massively over the last few years as well. Is there a potential, and maybe this was shown in the Dublin game, that if you have these fast-moving half-forwards, that they're getting caught out by fast-running players coming through, that they simply don't have the speed and pace they once had to cover? It is a worry.
I suppose the way I look at it is that that's definitely Mayo's first choice full back line, in my opinion. I think they're all excellent players. I don't know, is it a lack of pace? I think that what those players have proven to us over the last number of years, that they can go to Croke Park, go to any venue in the country and survive in a one-on-one situation. They mightn't dominate, they mightn't clean fellas as we describe it, but they can survive one-on-one for 20 minutes that maybe some other defenders haven't proven that they've been able to do, whether they've been Kerry or Tyrone defenders, particularly against Dublin. And I think, again, they're going to find themselves, because of the way Mayo play with the half-back lines up the field, that they're going to find themselves in one-on-one situations. And that's another risk against the way some of the Roscommon forwards are playing, and Conor Cox and Jimmer Murtagh are fine forwards. And Harrison or Chris Barrett or Keith are going to have to match up in a lot of space and be able to survive one-on-one. I suppose I have more confidence in the Mayo defenders maybe being able to do that than any other set of defenders in the full back line, other than maybe the likes of a Johnny Cooper or somebody in there who's exceptional in that regard also. So I still have faith in them, but it's always a risk. All it takes is one slip. We saw Keith Higgins slipping in the league game against Dublin, and it was a goal given up. But I think as well, what James has tried to do in that situation is that the recovery pace of some of the half-backs and midfielders to get back and try and help out those one-on-one situations has always been good. In that Dublin game, it wasn't. So it's as much about those defenders being able to delay the forward and push them out, as opposed to letting them in and wait for your help to come, as opposed to relying on a sweeper being there all the time with you.
Horan was saying ahead of the game that he's put a big focus on discipline. Have you noticed that throughout the league campaign? He said our discipline's been good. It's been very, very good. That's something we've been working on all year, and are tackling everything we do to try and reduce the number of frees that we give away. We've done very well on that. We talked through that sort of stuff, the different scenarios. There's crazy stuff that can happen in the first 2 minutes of a championship game, but we go through that, see what our behaviours are and what we could do with those things. Have you noticed that Mayo have really worked on their defensive discipline?
I think they've done well defensively in the league, and that they haven't given away frees. I think he's accurate there. I think there's no doubt that it would have been a point of emphasis. I think it would have been a point of emphasis of any of the Mayo supporters, considering what has happened, particularly against Galway, in terms of our discipline letting us down. Keith Higgins got sent off, I don't know, was that the year before last, for a petulant punch. And that those sort of things have cost Mayo in those big games, and in particularly in Championship. And it wasn't something that was maybe costing Mayo when James was there. He was very focused on that. So they have to just get back to being a bit more calm and not really letting the occasion get to them, or let the frustration get to them. Because I think a lot of those things that have cost Mayo in terms of players getting sent off has been players getting frustrated or being overeager. And you saw that with the Keith Higgins incident. You saw that with the Donny Vaughan incident in the All-Ireland final. And I think that it's very hard to win football games playing the way Mayo play, because they're so open, they're so dynamic, it's so attractive to watch. But if you're down to 14 minutes, it's practically impossible to win a game with that way. If you play blanket defence all the time and counter-attack, you might win a game with 14 men. But in terms of what James Horan wants his team to do, it's practically impossible.
A lot of focus, obviously, on some of the players who've emerged from Mayo over the league campaign, and there were definite positives. But one of the real positives over the past 12 months has been Diarmuid O'Connor, which seems like a pretty remarkable thing to say, considering he's a two-time Young Footballer of the Year. He's still only 24. From his performance down in Newbridge in the defeat to Kildare to man of the match in the league final, and just generally the level he's got to, what's that down to? Is it just a natural cycle of a footballer and finding himself and finding his best position, or is Horan doing something different?
Well, I think you said it yourself. He was Young Footballer of the Year for a couple of years, and he was playing at an exceptionally high level. And I think maybe the lull in form was as much to do with injuries and the difficulty he had in that regard. And now he's healthier. I think you're seeing the real Diarmuid O'Connor, and that's the player he is. He's exceptional. He's a wonderful footballer in terms of he tactically knows what to do in every area of the field. He's good on one-on-one situation. He can take a man on. He's good at winning a free, and he's a good shot on him to take a long-range point. I think the thing that probably impressed people most was that performance in Newbridge, because he went into midfield and did everything. It was a complete display. It's just at the minute that Mayo, probably they have to find a place for him, and probably the one area they're not as strong at is maybe in the half-forward line. And it's just that Matty Ruan and Aidan O'Shea is back in his best position, and that's probably a reason why he's not playing midfield. But I suppose it's a luxury that Mayo have, that if anything were to happen in that middle third, particularly when you go to Croke Park, where you need a real athlete and a real runner, that you can afford to put Diarmuid back in there, and he'll still have a big impact on the game. But that second half of the league final told you something else about Diarmuid as well, and maybe that's one of the reasons why he's captain. he has a big game mentality, and when that game was in the balance, he came up with 2 huge scores that really gave Mayo a good leg up in that game. And that's an element of his game, his leadership, that maybe we haven't focused on. And I think that's one of the reasons why he's captain. He's a real leader of this team now, even at that young age.
Looking at the forwards that have been named then for Mayo, and by the way, they've made 3 changes. Diarmuid O'Connor's back in the side. Michael Plunkett comes in for his first championship start. Chris Barrett named in the full-back line. Colin Boyle, James McCormick and James Carr all drop out of the side. So the forward line is Boland, Doherty, Diarmuid O'Connor in the half-forward line, Regan, Cohn and McLaughlin. A very different looking, certainly on paper, forward line than we've become used to from Mayo over the last few years. Are they trying anything different? Like the way Mayo's set up, is it very similar to Horan's last season in charge?
I think so. I think what you will see, and it will be noticeable, will be that Kevin McLaughlin will play kind of at the top of the D with Cohen and Regan inside him. And they'll be the 2 players that will play closest to goal. Cohen, that's his natural game. He's a full forward through and through. He's been a player that's been really good at club football. He's shown flashes in league football so far. It's an opportunity for him now to get up and running, and I think that's probably what he'll need. He'll need a good start to the game. If he's the sort of player, if he kicks one over the bar, his confidence is sky high, and he's a good shot in him then, and he's not afraid to take a shot, and that's what you want from your full forward. Evan Regan has been in and out. A fellow with a lot of talent, hasn't really delivered. But I think the key to the Mayo forward line will be Kevin McLaughlin, because on his game, he can get scores. He's a goal scorer. He gets goals, scorer of spectacular goals, and he's a great playmaker. And in that position, kind of, in between the full forward line and the half forward line, he hopefully will get on plenty ball there where he's able to thread a pass, lay a ball off to a fella that's running past him, or take a shot himself. And then when you look at the half forward line, Diarmuid's going to do what he's going to do. Same as Doherty. I think Doherty is at his most effective when he's winning breaks and out there and running and kind of coming across the goal, taking that long range shot. And Fergal Boland is probably the in-form forward out of all those people. In the last 2 or 3 rounds of the league, he came off the bench to great effect. He was again very sharp in New York, probably one of the better forwards there. He's not the biggest, strongest fella, but he has a good outside shot, and he's a very accurate player. And when you look at that forward line, there's probably not that many scorers in there, so they will be reliant on Kevin McLaughlin and Fergal Boland to be able to come up with a couple of points, and hope that Diarmuid O'Connor and Doherty, with all the hard work that they're going to do, are able to get on the end of something as well, to kind of take the pressure off Cohen and Regan, because they still are inexperienced at this level. But when you look at the forward line as well, you have to think about free taking. And I think Evan Regan, one of the reasons maybe he's got the nod is that he's going to be the left-footed free taker, and Jason Doherty is going to resume the role that he had throughout the league with his right foot. And he had free taking has been a problem for Mayo without Cillian O'Connor. So I think it'll be important for both of those players to make a good start to the game with their free taking.
Is there any worry with Kevin McLaughlin in that position that if teams are dropping a player back, if they're playing with a sweeper, that he struggles to get the ball where he can actually make that impact? That, listen, I presume what James Horan wants is that he runs the show from an attacking sense, that everybody buzzes around him. But then what happens if you stop him getting that ball?
Well, what you do if they're playing 2 or 3 bodies in around the D in the space that Kevin wants to work. The great thing about Kevin is that he's so versatile that he can actually do a job for you and go into number 13 and play corner forward. And if there's a little bit more space in there, he's a good ball winner out in front because he's quick. He can get out in front, and then he's got good ball control and a good shot in him if he can get it away. The other option you have with Kevin, and we've seen that he's played sweeper for Mayo. If James thinks it's necessary, he can come way out the field and be a playmaker from a deeper position if it turns into one of those cagey games. So I think Kevin's versatility is one of his best attributes, and I think that he has game intelligence as well, and he won't just rely on James Horan saying, waiting for James to give him the instruction. He'll go hunting for the ball because he'll know that he'll have to have an impact on this game, and the best way he can have an impact is by getting on that ball and playmaking, because he's the best footballer probably Mayo have in that area. James Horan's record in the Connacht Championship is insane. 11 games, 11 wins. They won all 4 Nestor Cups that they took part in when he was manager. The sense around Mayo is it still the priority? Is there a feeling that this is the straightforward way through to the Super 8s and that they need to maintain that run of silverware following on from the league, that actually they're going all in on Connacht this year? No doubt. That was very much the focus from the first meeting when James got them back together, whatever that was in November. And I think that the league final was just a distraction. With 3 games to go, you had the chance to win it and you focus on that. So it really was only something that was on their mind for maybe a month. And then I think it would be easy. It has been easy for them to get back to focusing on the Connacht Championship, because you have so many experienced players in that squad, and they know that the best way for them to compete is to win a Connacht title, not only because it gets you into the Super 8s with all the uncertainty of the qualifiers, but it just gives them that confidence boost again. They need to win that Connacht title because, as you said, they were dominant in Connacht, where no one could touch them in Connacht for 4 years. That they want to get back to that level. And I think that this Mayo team, to really see themselves as contenders, I think the way the Connacht Championship has panned out, I think if they're able to get over Roscommon and if they're able to beat Galway in Galway, well, then that gives you an extra boost in confidence because, let's be honest, Roscommon and Galway are, as I said, are in the top 8 or 9 teams in the country. And if you can get a couple of wins against those sort of quality teams before you go into the Super 8s, well, then that's hugely positive for your confidence.
What's your prediction for Saturday?
I think Mayo will win by 2 or 3 points. I think it'll be a very competitive game. I think you're going to see a good performance from Roscommon. I think the problem with Roscommon is it might be in their minds, and I think it'll be difficult for them to maybe win that game in the last 10 minutes because their record in McHale Park has been so poor. I think they haven't won since '86 or something like that. And with the boost to the crowd that Mayo are going to get, bringing on the likes of Andy Moore and bringing on Cillian O'Connor, Colin Boyle, Roscommon are going to have to deal with that, even if they're in a very good position going into the last 10 or 15 minutes. And I just think Mayo are going to be very strong at that time in the game, particularly if they're ahead going into it. I think they will be able to see it out.
There's been a lot of good stuff on OTBAM, our morning sports breakfast show here on all our social channels, 7:30 every weekday morning. Amongst the Kieran Donaghy, I don't know if you saw this, Billy Joe, he came up with a new championship format. He's obviously busy in retirement, but himself and Owen Sheehan put their heads together. Donaghy put his name to it, so people have been listening. And listen, championship structure is always a topic of conversation. So what Donaghy came up with was February and March provincial championships in a round-robin format, so that every team gets 2 to 4 games over the course of 5 weeks. All provinces to conclude with provincial finals over the one weekend. April for clubs, May for county training and hurling, where they'll have their month in the sun. And then June and July, a tiered championship. Tier 1 will have 2 groups of 8, open draw. Everyone plays one another, 3 home games, 3 away games, and 1 game at a neutral venue, somewhere like Nolan Park or a non-traditional venue. A week off. Top 2 in each group go into the semi-finals. First against second. Bottoms 2 of each group get relegated, and then August and September you have the semi-finals and finals of both tiers. Are you on board?
It's a good attempt. I'll give them that. I agree with the premise of some of it. I think that what the football championship needs is more games, and I think a round robin or a league basis is the best form of sport. To be honest, playing the provincial championships maybe as a pre-season tournament might be a good idea. I'm of the opinion, I don't agree with a tiered championship because I don't think that the so-called weaker counties are on board with it. In my own opinion, I think that he's on the right track, but maybe I would go along the lines of 3 groups of 10 or 11, whatever it works out based on who's in the championship, and each team plays once. And then you go into a quarter-final situation based on seeding as well, when everyone gets an opportunity. Because if you're a weaker county, look, just take, for example, maybe in Connacht, if you're Leitrim, okay, you're going to go away to Dublin, you're going to get beaten. But there might be a time when you get Roscommon or Mayo at home and you have a chance to turn them over. And a positive season for Leitrim, maybe after 10 games, if they were to come away with 4 or 5 wins, that would be huge. And it would be a great season for their supporters, and that's, I think that's the route the championship should go down in terms of 8 games or whatever, 9 games over 12 weeks and condense it in that regard, and then come away with quarterfinals and some sort of pre-season competition, whether it's provincial championships or the current FBD O'Byrne Cup system we have at present.
All right.
But that's kind of my tweak on it. But he's on the right track. We'll give him that.
All right, we'll give him that. We'll put it on the table. All proposals been accepted at this stage. Great stuff, Billy Joe.
Thanks, Nathan.